Good morning. Mayor Ginther and I have called this press conference this morning to discuss the preparations for demonstrations that may occur in relationship to the inauguration of the President of the United States. We're joined today by Columbus Police Chief Thomas Quinlan. Chief,
good morning, Governor. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it very, very much. We're also joined today by Ohio State Highway Patrol Superintendent, Colonel Richard Fambro. Colonel, thank you very much.
Good morning, Governor, for the opportunity.
Good to see you, sir. As well as Ohio National Guard Major General John Harris. General, good morning, sir.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning.
Thank you for being with us. Our First Amendment rights are sacred. We must always and will always respect the rights of peaceful protesters. However, I think all Americans were horrified by what we saw just a few days ago in our nation's capital, where a mob attacked the Capitol, where individuals died as a result, and where really the Constitution itself was under attack. We were horrified by what we saw. The sad truth is that there are people in our country who want to turn peaceful protests into opportunities for violence. These are violent people, and their violence will not be tolerated in Ohio. And it will not be tolerated anywhere. Just as we respect and will protect peaceful protesters, we will also just as vigorously resist violence. That violence will not be tolerated. So, the Ohio State Highway Patrol will be out in force in Columbus. The Ohio National Guard will be out in force in Columbus. Our Guard will be there to back up local law enforcement and to back up the Ohio State Highway Patrol. Both will have a significant presence in Columbus. Also, both will be available for any place else where trouble might arise. We have a strong relationship with our mayors, as we demonstrated, I think, this past summer. And when the patrol or the National Guard is needed to back up local police, they will be there, and we will respond quickly. I have a proclamation to sign that officially mobilizes the Guard to be in Columbus and to be anywhere else in the state that they are, in fact, needed. This is a proclamation that I am going to sign right now, and I will read a small portion of it. Now, therefore, I, Mike DeWine, Governor of the State of Ohio, hereby authorizes, as needed, in state activity duty status, those personnel and units of the Ohio National Guard as designated by the Adjutant General that are needed to assist the state and local authorities. I will now sign the document. I've done so now. Further, I have, at the request of our federal government, we are now, I've authorized the deployment of 500 more members of the Ohio National Guard, making a total of approximately 700 members of the National Guard that will be, and some are already, in the national capital area in Washington, D.C. or close by. We are, of course, part of a national effort, and our Guard always is part of that national force. We have unique capabilities. We have special personnel and special equipment that has been specifically requested by the federal government for us to deploy to Washington, and we have responded and done so. Along with Speaker Cupp and Senate President Huffman, we are announcing today that the State House will be closed this coming Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Further, I'm also ordering all state office buildings in downtown Columbus to be closed on these 4 days as well. State personnel will work from home or work from other assigned places. Finally, it is time, I believe, for us to come together as a country, as we always do after elections. It's time for us to observe the peaceful transfer of power and to remind ourselves of what brings us together, binds us together, holds us together as Americans. Our love for freedom, our love for liberty, our love for our Constitution. And that is what we'll celebrate in the days ahead. Let me now turn to Mayor Ginther. Mayor Ginther and I have done press conferences before in regard to the virus, in regard to other disturbances. So, Mayor, it's good to be back with you, even this time if we are remote from each other, but I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor, and good morning. Good morning to General Harris, to Chief Quinlan, Colonel Fambro. Very much appreciate you all being with us and your incredible leadership during these trying times. Our nation is facing a great struggle right now. After the violence at the Capitol last week and threats of armed protests across the country this weekend, and heading into the inauguration of President-elect Biden. Those threats are being brought to our doorstep right here in Columbus, to the steps of the State House. As I said last week, what we saw in the Capitol is not who we are as a country. It is unacceptable. It was a vile demonstration of the worst elements of our society that we cannot ignore and we must root out and guard against, lest it be allowed to squelch the pursuit of equality and the common good that defines who we are as a people. In the coming days, we will not allow hate, violence, and destruction to be part of our city. Our Constitution gives everyone the right to protest peacefully. It does not give anyone the right to incite violence, harm, or intimidate others or destroy property. Governor DeWine and I stand together on this. This is not a Democrat or Republican concern. This is not a partisan issue. It is our responsibility as Americans and elected leaders to protect the safety of our residents and defend our city, state, and nation against those who seek to tear it down. Hate has no place in Columbus, Ohio, or these United States of America. We're taking every measure together to assure the safety of our residents and protection of our institutions. That means activating the National Guard. That means close collaboration between the Columbus Division of Police, Ohio State Highway Patrol, Homeland Security, and the FBI. We can do our part to keep our city safe as well. What hate groups want is confrontation, to give them a platform and to amplify their message. Let's not give it to them. Avoid planned protests this weekend and leading up to the inauguration. Be aware of your surroundings and your situation. Leave if you do not feel safe. Seek help if you see something suspicious. If you see something, say something. to make sure we protect our neighbors and find peaceful ways to celebrate the lessons in life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who we celebrate birthday and honoring on Monday. As you all know, Governor DeWine and I have worked together closely over the last year on some of the most difficult issues our city and state have ever faced. Let me say it again. We stand together on this, protecting the safety and security of our city, our state, our residents, and those brave men and women who have answered the call to protect all of us. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Mayor. The mayor and I will now take questions.
First question today is from Farnoosh Amiri at the Associated Press.
Hi, Governor. Hi, Mayor Ginther. Thanks for
Morning.
holding this today. I would like to just clarify how many specific National Guards will be based in the state and available for Columbus or anywhere else, and how many you are reserving for Washington, D.C.
Yeah, let me go to General Harris. I would just say that my instructions to the general is that as many people as necessary, many members of the Guard as necessary, we will use. And I think the number that we are sending to DC is in the neighborhood of 700. But General, I'll turn it over to you now.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for the question. Well, yeah, that's correct, Governor. We're sending just upwards of 700 to the National Capital Region. And that's some very specific capabilities, as the governor said. First are those security type forces that can augment the law enforcement there in the National Capital Region. So that's just over, well, I won't get into the number, but it's 2 companies and a headquarters of specially trained folks that can help with the security of critical infrastructure there. Additionally, we've sent some communications personnel and equipment, and they'll be able to provide some redundancy for communication should that become necessary. So even in the most austere environments, they'll be able to establish voice and data communications if necessary. And on top of that, we've sent a very specialized unit called our Homeland Response Force. And that unit has the capability to not only provide security, but also they do what's called consequence management. So if there were a major event there, this unit can do very high level, high skilled search and rescue, both from confined spaces, high angle search and rescue, but also they can do it in a chemical, biological, nuclear environment. So this is a precaution that's been requested by the folks there in the National Capital Region, and the governor's directed that we send it. But I will tell you that we're always measuring the information, and the information drives our operation. So we're doing risk management to ensure that what we have here in the state is what we need for the state. So as the governor said, he's directed the mobilization of forces. What we've mobilized is our National Guard response force for missions here in the state right now, specifically for the Capitol. So that's, I will say, it's upwards of 400 personnel that we will have in the National Capital Region. And we've provided some depth, and I won't get into the specifics about that, but we have depth to respond to other places around the state also. And those forces will be able to do a number of missions. They can do security of critical infrastructure. They can do traffic control, vehicle checkpoints to augment local law enforcement if that becomes necessary. And if the worst case occurs and that those forces have to help with crowd control, they're specifically trained and equipped to do that.
Thanks, General.
Next question is from Jeff Reddick at WSYX in Columbus.
Hey, Jeff.
Hello to you both. This is a question for the mayor. Mayor Ginther, after last spring and summer's protests, the city put in place some level of ban on the use of tear gas and other chemical agents on crowds of peaceful protesters. Do those bans still exist in Columbus? Do they apply to the other forces who will be in Columbus this weekend? And do you worry about the appearance of uneven enforcement between Black Lives Matter protesters and these presidential supportive protesters?
Well, I think I'll let Chief Quinlan speak a little bit to the policy. The guidance that we have given him is that those chemical agents cannot be used on peaceful protesters, but once a protest has turned violent, once destruction of property or lives of protesters or officers is put at risk, those chemical agents can be used to disperse and control violent protests. But Chief Quinlan, do you want to speak any more to that? I think our approach to all protests will be consistent based on the policies and procedures of the Division of Police. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. You were very accurate. The division between the type of chemical irritants we use, CS, we're not using. There's another law enforcement application called OC spray that we do use for violent protesters. Again, it's based not on a person's beliefs or speech. It's based on actions and activities. So those will be clearly defined for the rules of engagement for all officers down there, whether they are Columbus or other jurisdictions assisting. And we will be working under what's called a unified command. So we will have control over who is deploying what irritant and when, and how we decontaminate after that. Those will all be steps in place.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
Next question is from Kevin Landers of WBNS in Columbus.
Hello, Governor.
Kevin?
Governor, by placing the National Guard on its highest level of alert, are you also approving the use of deadly force if needed? For businesses near the State House, should they be preparing to board up their store windows? And are you aware of any credible threats against President-elect Biden? Thank you.
Well, I'll start with that, and then I'll send it over to General Harris. We are concerned about what happened to businesses. I know there are a lot of small businesses that were really hurt over the summer, and certainly we are very concerned about them. And that is part of the reason, number one, you protect life. Number two, you protect property. We protect state buildings, but we also, I know the unified force has concern about businesses as well. So let me refer, as far as the force level, to the protocol and what the order is in regard to. Let me go to General Harris for that.
Yes, sir. We always ensure that our soldiers, our responders, our partners have the ability to defend themselves, so they will have that capability. But that's, of course, a last resort. The most important things that we can do to avoid the use of deadly force is, number one, we ensure that all of our members are not only aware of the rules on the use of force, but that they actually carry a pocket card and that we rehearse it. We put our leaders, we put our soldiers and our airmen through a number of scenarios, decision-making scenarios, so that they learn and instinctively use the minimum force necessary. And secondly, and this ties to the previous question, is we want to ensure that we give our soldiers, our airmen, our first responders as many tools as we possibly can so that we don't have to use deadly force. So the use of those irritants, while not desirable, is actually in some cases a safer course of action than the alternatives. So we put as much equipment, as many options in the hands of our personnel as we can, so that we can keep the crowd safe, so that we can keep our service members safe, and not have to respond with deadly force.
Next, General.
Next question is from Jake Zuckerman at the Ohio Capitol Journal.
Hi, Governor, just two quick questions here. One, is there any specific evidence that there will actually be some kind of demonstration at the Ohio Capitol this weekend? And two, the lockdown protest this summer, there was a heavily armed protest, or a heavily armed bunch of protesters. The George Floyd protest, there was the same. When the networks called the election for Biden, there was a self-identified militia at the Capitol. Just last week, there were brawls on the Capitol grounds. Everyone was watching DC, but there were literal fistfights at the Ohio Capitol. Why does it seem like there's just this newfound concern for security there when there's been this armed and kind of pugilistic presence going on all this time?
Well, it's not a newfound concern for security. We've always had a concern for security. We also, though, have seen what happened at the nation's capital. And we have seen that, and we also have other information, frankly, which I'm not going to talk about. So we have a heightened sense of concern, but we've always been concerned about security. And, most focus is always on protecting human life.
Next question is from Ben Schwartz at WCPO in Cincinnati.
Ben.
Hi, Governor. Can you speak on open and concealed carry while on State House grounds? I believe it's legal to carry a weapon on State House grounds. And I know I've seen plenty out there during previous protests, but I'm just wondering if you see that as an issue at all, and if you have reason to believe that there may be more people armed this one than during previous ones.
The law in Ohio provides for open carry on the grounds. That would include the outside grounds of the state capitol. Concealed carry for those who have a permit. So the law in Ohio does in fact apply, and that's what the law is.
Next question is from Jim Province at the Toledo Blade.
Hello again, Governor.
Jim.
So far, the discussion has been pretty much all about Columbus. You did mention that the National Guard would be available in other cities if necessary. Have we received any intelligence of probable or potential problems in other parts of the state?
Well, I'm not going to go into intelligence. That's an area that we never talk about, really. But look, we have a close relationship with the mayors throughout the state of Ohio. And when they perceive a problem and their chiefs perceive a problem and they need assistance, we will be there in regard to what they need.
Next question is from Spencer Hickey at Hannah News Service.
Thank you. I know you can't go into operational details, but could you discuss some of the lessons learned from the events in the District of Columbia, as well as at the State House in late May of last year? That may be better answered by the general, the chief, and the superintendent.
Right. I'll let them answer. I'll start, and then I'll let any of them who want to answer to do that. They're certainly the experts. As a layperson, just looking at what happened in our nation's capital, it's important to have enough force there from the beginning and not have to bring force in. So the ability to control violence or to lessen the chances of violence, I think that dynamic is changed by simply the presence of a large number of forces. So I think if you look at the lesson from last week at the U.S. Capitol, that's abundantly clear. After a while, when they had supplemental forces come in, you saw what they were able to do. So I'll go to any of the other our three experts out there who wants to make a comment.
Governor, I'll comment on that. You're absolutely correct, sir. Throughout the summer, as we saw the demonstrations and protests, it was abundantly clear to us that communication is key, and the belief that peaceful protests are always welcome. So communicating with the group organizers to allow them to understand the rules of engagement, us understanding what their purpose is, and making sure that we protect the infrastructure of the Capitol, but also allowing people that want to come down to exercise their First Amendment rights, that they can do that safely. And that is the goal of the Unified Command Force that we have partnered for this event. That's what we expect, that's what we hope for, and that's what we prepare for. And as you said, sir, being safe rather than sorry is really critical here, because people have a right to exercise their First Amendment rights.
Colonel, thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think that the colonel's spot on, and our experiences over the summer were that most of the people who were there with peaceful intent. The groups were organized, and that organization was good and very positive because it kept with that intent. but we also learned that just a few bad actors can be incredibly disruptive, and with large crowds like that can be dangerous. But in general, folks came to exercise their First Amendment rights. That's what they did, and they were incredibly respectful not only to the soldiers but to the police officers and the first responders who were there. But again, I have to emphasize that sometimes those groups are infiltrated by people with bad intent, and that can be dangerous not only for law enforcement and the Guard, but also for the people in the crowds who come there to demonstrate peacefully.
Mayor or Chief, either one of you want to add anything to that?
I will offer the fact that, again, with the general and the colonel were spot on. But to the question on lessons learned from past events, again, what it really did was reaffirm for us the knowledge that when you have people come down to peacefully protest and get a large crowd and some bad actors infiltrate that a different mentality can take over and turn a peaceful crowd into what we've seen in the past. And so we brought all the stakeholders, all the partners together to make sure that we have a plan in place to address and respond appropriately to any hazards that we see. Anyone who saw what occurred at the Capitol, any law-abiding person should be angered at what they saw. So again, we have plans in place here because we have concerns. And with those concerns comes preparation, and we are prepared to work with all of our partners, not just police and fire and National Guard, but with our healthcare workers and other emergency managers to make sure every resource we need is available and every resource we've asked for has been approved.
Thanks, Chief.
Next question is from Alex Ebert at Bloomberg.
Thanks much for having this discussion. Really appreciate the experts and your time. Could you please, as much as possible, provide some details about how you are intending to prevent people from entering the Capitol buildings or other government buildings? You know, what are we doing to make these harder targets? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll refer to the experts here. I'm not sure we want to get into all the details, but anybody who wants to take that.
Governor, I can speak to that. We will not discuss specific tactics or what we're doing. There are some obvious things that you will see as members of the public, fencing, that type of thing. But we're just prepared, more importantly, to ensure that we have partnered with all of the people and agencies and entities that were mentioned earlier to allow for peaceful protest. That's the hope, that's the messaging, and that's communication that we will stand on. Our number one goal is to protect life and property, and we will protect the Capitol, that infrastructure, period.
Next question is from Tom Gallick at Gongwer News Service.
Hi, Governor.
Tom.
I know there's been some talk nationally about maybe pursuing stronger anti-domestic terrorism legislation in the wake of the events of the Capitol. Are there any state law or policy changes you'd like to see in the wake of that, or is it just a matter of enforcing the laws that are already on the books?
I'm not aware of anything. We're always open to listening to what the experts tell us. I think it's primarily a security issue, law enforcement issue, intelligence issue, probably more than a statutory criminal offense issue. But we're always open. I'm sure the legislature is open if there's some deficiency that we have, but I'm not aware of it.
Next question is from Randy Ludlow at the Columbus Dispatch.
Hey, Randy.
Good morning, Governor. Is the intent here to have such a show of force that you believe the State House will be unassailable, that no protester will step foot inside?
Well, the State House is going to be closed, and we would intend for no one to go inside. That would certainly be the idea. I think that, we will have a significant presence there, and there will be a backup presence there as well, besides what you see. So I don't know if anyone wants to add anything to that.
Next question is from Laura Bischoff at the Dayton Daily News.
Good morning. This question is for General Harris and Colonel Fambro. Can you talk about your concerns going forward to deal with the long-term threats? When we don't have hundreds of guardsmen and patrol troopers deployed, and do you think that the January 6th events will have permanent changes in American life, similar to how we made permanent changes after the attacks of 9/11?
Or I'll take a stab at that first. I think that we've all seen that the events over the course of the summer and even into the winter months have required us to react at different times to protests and activities there at the State House. We are a force that is ready to respond to those, and we continue to prep and plan for those as a daily occurrence. So that's how I would answer the first part of that. The second part, yes, the events of January 6th change the way we look at things, but it's not really different from a planning and perspective that we look at security throughout what we do as an agency. It's more about collaboration and partnerships and keeping those relationships strong with our partners to ensure that we communicate, that we assess what we have in the way of equipment and the needs of each agency and responding accordingly. We are a force that relies a lot on our partners, both federal, state, and local, and those partnerships are strong. That predates any of the events that have occurred over the course of the summer. We've gotten stronger as a law enforcement and collaborative community, and I'm very proud of that.
I'd like to add, I think that the word collaboration is critical, and the partnership that you see here, the partnership between the National Guard, the State Patrol, the CPD, and police departments all over our state is something that's persistent, because it's our job to be, for lack of a better term, paranoid. So we're always assessing the situation, and those partnerships are what allow us to do that. So we're always adjusting and adapting to the current information, whether that's in cyberspace or whether that's the nature of the responses that we're preparing for now. But we consider those concerns to be persistent. So as I said before, information drives operations. So that determines where we focus our efforts and for how long we focus those efforts. But I guess the short answer is we never really consider the concerns gone. We never consider the concerns at zero. We're always, we as the military, we don't collect information on US persons, but we rely on our partners to always help us determine what's the best place to focus our priorities when it comes to responding to the needs of the citizens of Ohio.
Let me just add that we have known that we have domestic terrorists in the United States, and they're a grave concern. I think the only thing that really changed in regard to the events at the Capitol is it was displayed for the whole country and the whole world on live TV. And the images that continue to be shown show the gravity of it. But domestic terrorists have been a problem in this country and remain a problem in this country.
Next question is from Jordan Vandenberg at WEWS in Cleveland.
Good morning.
We'll skip Jordan. Next question is from Joe Ingles at Ohio Public Radio and Television.
Joe.
Governor, hi. The Michigan governor is saying that basically the state house up there is not really deemed to be as safe as it needs to be. Let me ask you, do you feel that the Ohio State House is safe? Not just this weekend, but is it safe in general? And are legislative or maybe administrative changes needed to make it safer in these troubled times?
I think the times we live in require us to constantly reevaluate security. And so a reexamination of the security at the State House, I think, is appropriate at this point.
Next question, we'll go back to Jordan Vandenberg at WEWS in Cleveland.
Sorry about that, Governor. Good morning. My question is around the clear distinction between peaceful protesters and agitators. As we've seen in protests over the years, there is a very, very clear line between those two parties. My question is, how difficult is it to not only identify those agitators, but also possibly prevent them from causing harm?
Well, I'll start on that, and then we'll see if anybody else wants to make a comment. I mean, clearly what we have seen is people who want to commit violence basically hide among people who are there simply to protest. And they use them as cover, frankly. And that's what we see time and time again. Majority of people come to protest, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it was in Washington this past week, are there to express their opinion and to protest, and they feel adamant about it. But we've seen that people who have a very different agenda, a dark agenda, can use that as the occasion to be there, to hide among them, and then to carry out their violence. So I'll see if anyone else wants to comment.
Thank you, Jordan. This is Tom Grant, Columbus. I get asked often by community members, what can we do to help the police keep our city safe? And in this instance, what I would ask is that if you do not have business downtown in the next several days, from Friday through next Wednesday, take that time to take your family out to support a local business or restaurant, or go to a park. Avoid the area downtown, but you certainly have the right, people have the right to peacefully protest. And if they do, then what I would implore them to do is follow the directions of the public safety professionals that are down there to keep you safe. That's how we can best separate those who are engaged in unlawful behavior from those who are down there to exercise their lawful rights. Just follow our directions. We will maintain as much safety as we can for you if you comply and maybe step aside or go in the direction we ask you to go, until we deal with those who are bent on causing harm to people, harm to our property and businesses, harm to our institutions and symbols of government. We will deal with those and then reestablish a safe location for you to return to. So my request would be to avoid the area. If you choose to come down, please just follow our directions so we can maintain the safety, and we will make sure that we deal with those who are there for illegal purposes.
Excellent points, and I might add, I spoke earlier about communication and collaboration. I'll talk a little bit about the command staff that we maintain at the State House. One of their principal duties is to ensure that, again, those people descending on the State House can do so and exercise their right to free speech in a peaceful manner and in a peaceful environment. That entails meeting with group leaders to establish those ground rules and communicate and understand if something happens or something goes south, we know who to connect with. And they do that often. And I'll praise some of those group leaders over the course of the summer that took the opportunity to ensure that two-way communication was there, but also turning over bad actors that they identified as not being a part of their group or their messaging, and ensuring that the troopers or the police officers down there, or deputies, knew who was identified as a bad actor and not a part of their group or their belief system. So I would just ask and echo what the chief said and add to that, that communication piece is important, again, to allow people to peacefully assemble and protest and express their rights. We're there to listen. We hear what you have to say. We understand that you have a right and a belief system that you want to display and communicate, and we're there to assist you in doing that. But we ask that you follow those ground rules and, more importantly, communicate with us. And as the mayor said, if you see something, say something.
Next question is from Meredith Stutz at WLWT in Cincinnati.
Good morning, Governor.
Morning.
My question to you and everyone on this call is, considering what we saw last week in Washington and the ever-shifting social media and online landscapes that we're seeing in real time, how confident are you in the intelligence, pre-intelligence that you all have that will be reliable throughout the next several days? And how confident are you that that can get through to not only the people on this call, but also to individual troopers and law enforcement officers? And also, if you would care to comment on any concerns you have of this large amount of law enforcement gathering and potential protesters gathering during a pandemic.
Well, I think intelligence is always, you always ask the question, do we have enough intelligence? Are we getting what we need? I spent 12 years on the Senate Committee on Intelligence, and for the world, obviously, as we look at the world, do we have enough intelligence? And so it's the same way in law enforcement. I don't think you ever have enough intelligence, and you always do, in fact, worry what, do you have enough information? But I'll turn it over to the law enforcement side and see if anyone wants to comment, or General Harris wants to comment.
Thank you, Governor. Just real quick, without going into what intelligence is available to us, what I will say for the confidence of people that find themselves in this area is that we have had routine calls and information sharing between the U.S. Conference of Mayors, major city chiefs, capital city mayors and chiefs, FBI, state fusion centers. We are communicating frequently with what information is available, what we need to know to make solid decisions that are right for our community. Then, before we deploy any officers in the field, we always have a pre-deployment briefing where all the rules of engagement are covered, any intelligence that we can share with them to be aware of, to be watching for, to be documenting, and to be acting on is down at the line level. So they're available to act in real time on what they anticipate or what they may be even unanticipated in seeing, knowing how to react to that. Thank you, Meredith.
I'd like to respond to the concern about the coronavirus and bringing these folks together collectively. It is a real concern for us. And I'll just remind you that these National Guard folks that we're bringing on duty were doing something else just a couple of days ago and had no idea they'd be coming here, except for the fact that they've been put on a higher state of alert. So these are people who are working on they've stepped away from a work project. They've had to figure out what to do with their pets. These are folks who just stepped out of their civilian lives to become soldiers and airmen. Just a couple of days notice. So there is concern about bringing those folks together and the coronavirus. So we've done a few things. We've coordinated with the state testing team, and every person that we're bringing onto duty for these missions, we're having them take the Binax Now test, the rapid test, and so that we can screen them. And if someone comes up positive, we'll take the appropriate measures. But these are the kinds of risk decisions that we make. We have to respond. This is our responsibility to the people of Ohio and the oath that we took. So we put as many mitigation measures in place. We'll be masking. We'll maintain social distancing as much as possible. But this is part of being a soldier and airman. Sometimes you have to assume a little greater risk than the typical population in order to accomplish the mission. And that's what makes these citizen soldiers, these citizen airmen, so great, is that they're willing to do that and they never shy away from that. And we've been doing that from the start. We've done that in food banks. We've done that when we put folks in prisons, and we've kept mitigation measures in place that have helped us control the spread of the disease throughout our force. And quite frankly, that's important for the mission, but it's also important when we send these people back home, when we demobilize them to go back to their families. We certainly want them and their families to be safe.
Meredith, you raise a good point and a reminder. We still are in the throes of a global pandemic. And so if there are folks that are coming to protest peacefully, we encourage them to mask up and, as much as possible, socially distance. It's incredibly important to protect other peaceful protesters, but also protect our guardsmen, our troopers, and our officers as well. So appreciate that reminder.
Next question. Go ahead, Colonel.
No, I'll just touch on that too. The mayor's correct. Everyone is correct in that. The thing that I like to throw out there is when we talk about intelligence and safety, we're always concerned also about the safety of our women and men that have taken an oath to be involved in public service. So as superintendent, the safety of our troopers as well as our partners is of utmost concern to me. And the one thing that sometimes gets lost in the fray is that they are people too. They're members of these communities and represent the same beliefs and values of good American people that have chosen a life in public service. And as people come down to peacefully protest, it's important that they remember that these women and men have chosen this profession, and they have families at home too that need to be protected and that are concerned about their personal safety as they go about doing their duties.
Next question is from Kenny Bass at WCHS in Charleston, West Virginia.
Hi, thanks for taking the question. A couple of quick things to cover, maybe one for the governor and maybe one for the National Guard. Governor, I've heard a lot about armed protests going on at the Capitol. If it's legal to carry weapons, either concealed carry with a permit or open carry, whatever Ohio's laws are, do you handle something that's labeled an armed protest differently than something that would be labeled an unarmed protest? And secondly, in West Virginia, which I'm more familiar with, most National Guard troops, when they're deployed, are in support and logistical positions. Will that be the same in Ohio? I noticed the last resort was mentioned that for National Guard troops to be handling what we would normally deem police responsibilities. So the Guard obviously is available for those types of things, but is its primary mission support and logistics in case it has to step in? And also, can you address the unarmed versus armed protests in your mindset in dealing with those? Thank you.
Well, I'm going to let General Harris respond to both of those. In regard to the first one, just very, very quickly, we follow the law. They have the right to do that, to be armed. Obviously, it would heighten your sense of concern. And that's about all I will say. We'll let go to General Harris. Let you handle that, General.
Yes, sir. We're prepared to do the full spectrum of operations. So if sustainment, logistics type support is what's required, then we're in a position to provide that. We're the 5th largest National Guard in the country. So we have a significant set of capabilities available to us and to the governor. But as I said before, we're prepared to go all the way up to doing security of fixed sites right alongside local law enforcement and the state patrol. We're equipped and we've outfitted our units to be able, if they need us to do patrols side by side, roving patrols side by side, either mounted or dismounted with local law enforcement, we're prepared to do that. And if we're asked to do actual crowd control, we're prepared to do that. We've rehearsed formations with the state patrol. We've worked with both of these entities before, and if we're asked to integrate with them in order to help control crowds, we're prepared to go to that level.
I don't know if anybody wants, law enforcement wants to answer Kenny's other question about people being armed. I don't know if anybody wants to take that or not. Okay.
I'll briefly address the issue is, again, it's not the fact whether a person's armed, it's a person's actions, what they're doing with the weapon that they possess. And again, if they're legally complying with law and the open carrier, concealed carry laws, then they'll have no interaction with law enforcement. If they're engaged in provocative behaviors that are rise to the level of illegal activities, then they should expect to encounter law enforcement appropriately.
Thanks, Chief.
Next question, Adrian Robbins at WCMH in Columbus.
Thank you, gentlemen. My question is for Mayor Ginther or Chief Quinlan. We're talking a lot about the Ohio State House, obviously, but how concerned are you about threats throughout the Columbus area? And what's your recommendation if these people live, work, or own businesses downtown or just in the general downtown area? What should they do over the next week?
I appreciate the question. I think we have spoken mostly about the State House and the downtown area. What I would recommend to folks, I think that a number of folks have mentioned here today, if you don't have to be downtown, particularly on Sunday, I'd encourage people to stay home or enjoy parks or other places with their families in neighborhoods throughout our city. We have been in contact with, and we have briefed downtown, Short North, Arena District business owners, and shared information. I know law enforcement in the city have reached out to folks to share information and provide resources to them, as much information as we can provide to them about taking steps to protect themselves, their businesses, and their employees. Ultimately, it will be their decisions about closing or not. But really trying to do our part to make sure that we allow folks that are there to peacefully protest to demonstrate their First Amendment rights, but also for General Harris, Colonel, and Chief to keep them safe, but the greater community safe as well. And so we're going to continue to work together with the state, federal, other authorities to make sure that regardless of what part of town, that both protesters and the public are safe.
Next question is from Jeremy Pelzer at cleveland.com.
Hi, Governor. Thanks to you and all the officials on this call for taking our so many questions. Do you guys have any idea or even an estimate of how many people you're expecting to show up? I mean, are we talking thousands, hundreds, dozens? Do you have any idea?
Anybody want to take that?
We don't it's Colonel, sir. We don't have any idea, Jeremy. I wish we did know, but we plan as if we can handle crowds from 1 to thousands.
Next question is from Dan DeRose at WOIO in Cleveland.
Good morning, gentlemen. I think everything's really been covered here on the security front, so I'd like to unfortunately break protocol a little bit. Governor, Summit County rolled out their plan for the vaccine yesterday, and I think I wasn't alone being pretty astonished to find out that there is no central registration program that's going to be unveiled. If you want a chance at the 200 doses that the Summit County Public Health is getting, you can register with them. But the other 5,500 doses for the county are going to Giant Eagle, Mark's, Drug Mart, Acme, among many others. So now you're asking 80-year-olds who may be a little tech challenged, not only do they have to register with Summit County Public Health, but Giant Eagle, Mark's, Drug Mart, and Acme, all of which have nothing up yet to register to get an appointment, and we are 5 days away. Is this really the plan you wanted for the rollout?
No, I'll address that more at 2 o'clock, but I'll give you a little, maybe try to answer it a little bit now. I'll do it in more detail at 2 o'clock on our regular press conference. We start with the situation that we have a scarcity. We have a scarcity of the vaccine. And we've said that, but I think sometimes people don't realize that. And we do have a scarcity. We're balancing a number of different things. One of the things that people told us in communities is we want to be able to access this close to us. We don't want to have to just have no other option than to go to one central place. This is a state that is a decentralized state. This healthcare is provided in a decentralized way. Just as an example, I think about a third of all the flu shots every year are given in pharmacies. Wouldn't have been something we would have expected 20 or 30 years ago, but that's the way it is working today. So for the first couple weeks, this is what you're going to see. And yes, there will be more inconvenience on the front end. There's no doubt about that. Now, if you're in a small county, you've got 3, 4, 5 locations, even a mid-sized county, that will be much easier. A larger county, yes, it is going to be more challenging. But we hope the way this works is that once people are able to sign up, get a confirmation, that when they go, they will then, on that end, not be inconvenienced by waiting a long time. We have seen pictures coming out of other states where people have waited hours and hours and hours and hours. So what we have decided to do is to try this and more decentralized and let people be able to get it where they normally get shots. Some physicians will have it, physicians who are part of a bigger healthcare system, hospitals will have it. or federally designated clinics will have it. And this way, everyone will be fairly close to a location. Now, there will be frustration. And the frustration is going to also be driven by the fact that we know next week, when we open this up on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, that we have in the state of Ohio about 425,000 people who are 80 years of age or older. We believe that we're going to have about 100,000 or so doses available next week. And so obviously not everyone over 80 and older will be able to get it. And that is a national problem that every state has to figure out how to deal with. And so I don't like it that we don't have enough, but that is the reality. That's the world I live in. What we will do then in several weeks is we hope we have more. We have the ability to bring that out to a further group of people. We also have the ability, and we're working now to set up bigger locations where people can literally go and get in line, and if that's the way they choose to get that, and to queue up basically and go through. So in a few weeks, as we get more, we're going to expand it. And the issue always is, how do we get out? What we don't want is any vaccine sitting on shelves for very, very long. On the other hand, we want people to have the convenience of being fairly close to them. We worry about underserved populations only having one place to go. So yes, this will be an inconvenience to people initially as they try to sign up, and as they do sign up. We recognize that. We hope that they're compensated on the other end by not having a long, long wait. As far as a central registry, we'll talk a little bit more about that this afternoon.
Governor, could I just add a word to that? I mean, the governor's been in constant contact with mayors around the state for months, working on these issues, and we continue to offer feedback and guidance. He's been very receptive to that and made clear to us that this is a marathon, not a sprint, and that we are all focused on continuous improvement, getting the vaccine that we have to local communities around the state, but most importantly, getting these vaccines in those that are most at risk. And so we know that there are other ways that we can improve this process in more coordination on a local level, but it's going to require the continued collaboration and partnership between the state, our local health departments, and these private providers as well. So I think things will continue to improve with respect to collaboration and delivery of vaccines on the local level.
Mayor, thank you very much. So we will continue to evolve this, and we will continue to do something that we think is very, very important, and that is that we prioritize the most vulnerable people among us and get the vaccine out. And by most vulnerable, I simply mean the most likely to die if, in fact, they get the virus. And so we're not going to just open it up. That might be the simplest thing to do, but that will cost lives. So we're trying to get people who are 80 years of age a week jump on this, and then we'll move forward every week and add additional groups. But there will be frustration, and certainly I have frustration until we get enough vaccines. And so these are all trade-offs. But we continue to stay in touch. I was on the phone yesterday with Mayor Jackson. Mayor Ginther and I talk a lot. I'm on with all the mayors today at 11:30 again, as far as the mayors of our bigger cities. And I think, frankly, candidly, you're going to see a challenge more in the bigger metropolitan areas, the smaller communities where we may be only to have 3 or 4 locations. They're going to be able to handle that easier than someone who lives in an urban area. But we're evolving this, but we're going to keep our eye on the ball. And the eye on the ball means we save lives, we try to get our kids back in school, and we protect our first responders. Thank you very much. We'll be back at 2:00.